It seems to me we can't get enough of our boogeymen. What's your take on all these rumors we've been hearing about vampires?
If vampires existed, don't you think we would have found them by now? People want to be concerned. We should focus in on characters like this sociopath that we've been pursuing.
He believes that he is out there slaying monsters.
Why can't you just be nice?
Because the world isn't nice. You're public enemy #1, Blade. We're gonna have to take on the rest of the world, too. Don't shoot! Don't shoot!
He's fought the war against darkness alone.
We use the humans to flush you out.
Until now.
Evening, ladies.
This way!
Who the hell are you people?
My name is Hannibal King, and this little hellion right here is Abigail.
Whistler's daughter.
Guess hunting just runs in our blood.
Your kids. The hell makes you think you know about hunting vampires?
For starters, I used to be one.
Rookies.
Vampires were searching for the final solution. The original vampire. They found him. He was born perfect. This guy has never had to evolve. It's the end game, Blade.
Time for payback. Get ready to roll with this. Blade, ready to die. Since the day I was born. Forgot my sword.
No.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of BAMB the Pod. We have a great movie choice today we're going to be talking to you about. And we have another friend with us. If you're watching the video, you might be able to see us. We can wave. We're not sure how this is going to work with the split screen, but we're going to try it anyway. So
we're going to do it anyways because we don't care.
So yeah, we are the Bad Action Movie Brothers. My name is Brad, aka Braden. My brother Brian is here. Say hello again, Brian.
Hello again.
And then we have Curtis. Say hi, Curtis.
Hi, I'm a different kind of brother.
I was gonna say I don't know if I could say that. I was like, we have a brother, but can I say that?
He said it for you, so we're good. This movie is, well, I alluded to it before on a previous podcast. I believe it was our podcast on. Oh wait, here we go. If you can see my shirt. Never Too Young to Die, that podcast, I said we're going to have another Ryan Reynolds appearance.
Yeah.
Because we had a recommendation. And Curtis has recommended the movie Blade Trinity, the third of the Blade movies.
Not Blade 3.
Nope, it's Blade Trinity. And of course, we do have drinks. So should we talk about our drinks, or should we ask Curtis first, why he picked this movie? What do you think we should do, Brian?
Well, he's our guest, so maybe he could talk a little bit first to introduce himself, and then that way I can drink some.
Great idea.
Drink for a little while, and then we'll be ready to go.
Okay, so Curtis, I'm going to hand you the mic, and I just want you to tell us briefly, what inspired you to pick this as your bad movie option.
Okay, so what inspired me? I don't know. You asked me for movie options, right? And I was just thinking about all the action kind of movies I've seen, and I have a weird fondness for this movie just because it's so bad to me. But it's also so good in that kind of special kind of way. And the cheesy lines and all that stuff. And I love the Blade series. So this one just came to mind. And I was like, nobody talks about this movie. So I was like, I'd be interested to hear somebody talk about Blade Trinity. And so that's why I brought it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm gonna let a cat out of the bag here. This is actually my favorite of the Blade series.
No, it's not.
Really?
It is. It is. I like this movie, and we'll talk about that. But the other thing is, Curtis is a big comic guy.
I am.
Oh, okay.
And we're comic guys, so we're probably going to enter into if you can
He's
see
got
the shirt.
Groot on his T-shirt. I have Sailor Moon.
Yeah,
I'm a real man.
You got the better shirt. You got the better shirt for sure.
So we all have excellent shirts on. We've established that. But let's talk about our drinks, and then I have some quiz-related comic book questions for both of you guys that I've already prepared, which we like. So, do you want to tell us about your drink, or do you want me to tell you about our drinks first?
Sure. I'll tell you about my drink. I made a crazy drink, and there's a story that I have to tell. It's tangentially related to my drink, but since it's our podcast, I can talk about whatever I want.
That's true.
So, if you've seen any of the Blade movies, you know there's a character called Whistler.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of like the old guy, right? He's like his mentor, or he's his human companion. I don't know exactly his role, but he's the crusty old guy. and so I thought, well, maybe I'd make a crusty old drink. Okay.
Yeah.
Now in this movie, we also are introduced to a character who is Whistler's daughter.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Jessica Biel, which we'll get to. But have you ever heard of Whistler's mothers?
No.
No. Okay. Well, do you remember a popular YouTube video several years back with a whistler, a man with a mustachioed mullet man?
Yes. Have you seen this, Curtis?
Amazing whistling?
I don't think so. I don't think I'm familiar.
Okay. Well, you need to check it out.
Okay.
Check out something like World's Greatest Whistler, something like that. It's a sight to behold. It's hilarious. So a couple years ago, our cousin reaches out to me and says, the Whistler guy is making videos for people, custom videos. So this Whistler's video was done probably sometime in the early 80s, because he's sporting like the mullet and the mustache, and in the video you see the people in the audience that he's whistling on a public access TV show of some sort. And they all have the 80s hairstyles and dress and everything. So modern times, flash forward currently, as he became like a meme and a viral sensation, he's doing videos for people where he'll whistle and do like happy birthdays and stuff.
Stop it.
Yes, and we just couldn't believe it. And so we had him do a video for our other brother, Barry, for his birthday. And actually, he's a really cool guy. And we became friends, like online and Facebook and stuff like that. He actually has a band called Whistler's Mothers, where he whistles along with a rock band, and they do live shows.
Alrighty. Okay then.
So I felt like that story was necessary for whatever reason, because it's so absurd but true.
Yeah. I still mention the. Well, okay. I should say this: the whistling original video itself is hysterical, but there's an overdub,
right?
Which is even more hysterical.
Yes. It's so amazing. And the dude, Ralph, is just a cool, funny guy. And super nice. And I mean, he's even like wished other people. I think he sent out a birthday video. We'll link it in the YouTube video because you need to see it. Anyways, enough about that, but I felt like with all the Whistler talk, it was appropriate. Right. So I'm calling this the Whistler's Mother, in honor of the character in the movie and my friend Ralph. and I made a crusty old dude drink. It's a whiskey sour.
Okay.
But here's how I made it special. I made an extra large version. Did 4 ounces of whiskey.
Oh no.
Whole lemon.
Hey.
And some maple syrup, about an ounce of maple syrup, and then some cloves.
Ooh.
Okay. Now here is the kicker.
Yeah.
This whiskey, 100% Old Granddad 114.
Oh man, you did 4 ounces of 114?
Yes.
Chug.
I'm about to. So by the end of this, I probably won't remember what movie we're watching, and I'll probably be even more red than I already am.
That's a good drink.
So be prepared for that. And it's very tasty.
I'm legit jealous. I'm so jealous of you.
Yeah.
So I had to go down the Ryan Reynolds route because we knew that we were having Ryan Reynolds on here again. Although he's not the star, he's in the film. He's a side character, who we will talk about. He's been a reoccurring figure of discussion, along with his gin company, Aviation Gin. So I felt like I had to do a Negroni upgrade, is what they call it, which comes right off the Aviation Gin webpage. And it's their recipe for their Negroni. So this is the Ryan Reynolds Negroni recipe. And the thing that I like about this is it's actually it's very gin forward, and in the sense that it's a lot more gin than the Campari or sweet vermouth. So it's actually 2 ounces of gin for 3/4 ounce of Campari and 3/4 ounce of the sweet vermouth. So I made one. Actually, I'm on my second because I started early, and Curtis just finished his first. I might make him another one in a minute if he wants one. But it's also cool because it's red, so it kind of looks like vampire blood.
That's true.
So I figured because it's in honor of Ryan Reynolds, we'll call it the Hannibal King cocktail, because that's a character that he plays. And I'm going to pull it in front of the camera here, so you can see very nicely what it looks like
on split screen.
Oh, there it is. So it's got a nice, you can see the nice red color to it. I garnished it with a mandarin orange, because that goes well with the citrus goes well with the gin and the Campari. So yeah, that's our drink. And what do you think of yours? Did you like it?
It was so tasty. It's one of the tastier Negronis I've had. And I love Negronis in general, but this was a good one.
So Curtis was telling me that he'd been drinking Negronis for a while, and you found out from another podcast. Tell us about that real quick.
Oh, yeah. You know Aisha Tyler, right?
Yeah, of course.
Archer
and all the Ubisoft presentations.
Yeah. So she had like a podcast back in the day called Girl on Guy, and I was like a big fan of that. And she used to talk about like drinking Negronis on that all the time. So that was like, oh, I want to be cool like Aisha Tyler. So I started drinking Negronis. And then like I used to order it and nobody would know what the hell I was talking about. And I used to be dope. But now everybody's on it. So I'm like, I need to find a new drink. You know, got to keep the hipster streak alive. Yeah. That's fair.
I like it. Yeah.
So that's what we're drinking, and it's pretty good. So that's the Hannibal King cocktail. I'll put a photo up of it, but I just gave you the recipe. So
yeah.
Are you ready
for some? I've made those before, and they are excellent.
Yeah, I know we've done several of these, but this is a slight variation in the sense that I did do the Aviation Gin specific recipe. So
yep.
All right, I have because I have 2 comic book nerds with me. I have a pop quiz.
You're one of us too.
Yeah, but I'm going to ask the questions. I don't even for sure know what questions I'm going to ask. They're going to be kind of on the fly, but we're going to do it. So are you ready, Brian?
I'm ready as I'm going to be.
Are you ready, Curtis?
I could be drunker, but we're good.
I'm sure Brad can make that happen.
I'll make you another. As soon as this quiz is over, I'm going to make you another drink, and we'll let you guys talk about that movie while I make the drink real quick. Okay, so some comic book history and trivia, because I like this stuff. True or false? Blade is the first African-American superhero to appear in comic books.
I don't know this at all.
Okay.
I am going to guess false.
Okay.
But I really have no idea.
Okay.
To be perfectly honest.
I'm going to go to Curtis and see what he thinks.
This is a lot of pressure. I also want to say false. I want to say Luke Cage was first, but I am uncertain.
But you guys are both right. Okay, so that's good. He's not the first African-American superhero. Actually, the first African American superhero was Falcon.
Oh.
Who appeared in, of course, the Captain America comic book series. And an important point with Falcon that I think, from a historical standpoint, is he was not a sidekick. He was actually a partner.
Okay.
So that's important.
Like that.
Okay.
Have you heard they're doing a Falcon and Winter Soldier series?
Yes, that's going to be awesome.
Yeah. Excited
All right.
about it.
So here's another historical comic book question. Blade was the first African-American comic book character to receive his own title series. These are tricky questions, so don't feel bad if you don't know the answer.
I fight you for not knowing the answer, though. This is giving me... I thought I was out of school, bro. Like, I don't need this society. I'm going to say... let's just go for it. Let's say true. We'll say true. I don't have any reason why. I'm just going to say it.
What do you say?
I think it's possible. Sure, I'll agree. True.
The first African-American superhero to have his own title comic book series was actually Luke Cage. So that was your first answer.
You got messed up? I hate you.
Okay. Yeah. Now here's a really obscure reference. The first I should say black character to be in comics at all was actually a Western character. And his name was, I have the comic book. They only released 2 issues. Lobo, it's called, not Lobo from DC Comics. This was a Western character. He was like a sheriff, kind of like a Django, but it only had 2 issues before they canceled. This was like in the 60s.
Interesting.
Yeah, but the first black superhero was Black Panther, but he's not African American. He's from Africa, Wakanda, and then of course Storm. Was the first female black character, but she's also from Africa, make-believe city in Africa. But here's the interesting thing about all this that I only was reminded of when I started rewatching this film and then looking up my comics. Blade is not actually African American. He is from England.
What? When did that happen? Is that like that's canon still? Is that still there? Like.
I don't know in the new series. Certainly in the movies, he's not from England. But in the original Tomb of Dracula comic book series, which I have, here's one of the volumes. This is volume 1.
Nerd.
This series was based off the original Bram Stoker's Dracula. And if you've read that series, or that novel, that British novel. It takes place in England. He travels from Transylvania to England. And so this comic book series actually starts and takes place in England, and Blade is British. So he's of British African descent.
I reject that.
That's interesting. I had no idea.
Yeah, Wesley Snipes is obviously not British, nor is he in these films. Now, here's another interesting thing about these films, too, is these are very early comic films.
Yes, very early.
In terms of, now that's a very popular platform we see. He is a Marvel character, but this was in the era when Marvel was selling off properties to other companies. I believe are these Sony or are they Fox?
New Line.
Okay. So this is New Line. I don't know if you saw this trivia when you were looking it up, but this is the first of the Blade movies to actually have the Marvel opening sequence in it. And it also had the Easter egg at the end, because Marvel at this point, by the time the 3rd movie had come out, had started doing their other Marvel films. So there's hints there that Blade was going to be incorporated maybe into the Marvel MCU, because he'd already been around for a while. But I think that the reason why they probably made these movies initially is just because of the vampire, fads. That were so popular. They're like, oh, here's a vampire character that's been around.
Black Buffy.
Yeah, exactly. No, but this is really interesting because a lot of people forget these movies, and this is one of the first, African American superheroes to appear on film for sure.
Go ahead, Curtis.
I was gonna say, now does this predate even the X-Men? Like X-Men is kind of like responsible for bringing the superhero wave back in a little bit too. Like, does this predate the X-Men movies? I was trying to think.
I would have to look and see when the first Blade movie came out, but I'm pretty sure that the first Blade movie was probably the biggest or one of the higher grossing superhero movies that had ever come out. And I think it does predate most of the mainstream big budget superhero movies.
Yeah, it was very early.
Blade was 98, and the first X-Men was 2000.
There you go.
So yeah, and then of course you also had the Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire that were early Marvel productions. But yeah, this is very, in that sense, the whole Blade series is very influential, I feel like, and very before its time. Because obviously we've seen Black Panther and the great success it's had, amazing film, the incredible impact it's had. But this was there, a while ago.
Yeah, I remember seeing the first Blade movie in the theater and just being blown away. I thought it was so freaking cool. And then Blade 2 was even way cooler. Honestly, at the time, I don't think I was familiar with Blade as a comic book character. I grew up reading comics. We both did. We've talked about that a lot. But I wasn't familiar with those comics. So to me, it was just sort of a cool vampire movie, which was enough for me to go see it. And, I love the first two Blade movies. I also love the third Blade movie, but for different reasons than the first two. So I'm interested to hear why you like this one the best, but I probably have some good reason, a good idea why maybe you like it the best.
I'll definitely get into that. Before we get into the film, I just wanted to mention, for if there is other comic geeks out there, I have some, because we have video now and we're on YouTube. This right here, I'm going to show you. This is Tomb of Dracula number 10. If you can see that there. That is the series that Blade originally appeared in. This is actually the first appearance of Blade.
Oh, wow.
So that's a very, very collectible comic. Then in issue 13, which I have right here, this is the origin of Blade. Now, do you guys know his origin story? It kind of comes out in the first film, but not exactly.
Well, I don't know now, since you told me he's British, so anything's possible. You're going to tell me he's a vampire Doctor Who now. I don't know.
You don't know the origin story of his?
No, I can't say that I do.
Okay.
Honestly, my experience with Blade is purely from these movies.
And you know what? That was my case as well initially. Is that true for you as well, Curtis?
The movies, and then he was on a few episodes of the Spider-Man animated series in the 90s.
Right, definitely.
Valid, yeah, that's true. I got into these comics after the movies. So it's here's the thing I've noticed about me and comic films. If I read a comic and I'm really into it, and then they make a film of it, I'm far less likely to like the film. If I've never read a comic and I go see the film, I probably like it, and then I go read the comics, and I find out there's variations and differences, like the fact that Blade is British, but I don't mind it as much because I came to the comics from the film. Sure. And that's how it was with me for Blade. I love the Tomb of Dracula series, but I love the old 70s horror genre of comics. I love the Swamp Thing comics from DC, and I feel like they were kind of like outliers in the comic world for a while. And for that reason, I really loved them, but there were just some great storytelling as well. But go ahead.
I was just gonna say, the vampires, werewolves, the old type of monster movies that were more popular, maybe in the 50s, those were a lot more popular in the comics back at that time too. Yeah. They a lot of the really early comics were horror based and monster based. It really wasn't until a little bit later when the superheroes sort of, took over. At least that's my perspective on it.
No, you're completely correct, and not to completely nerd out, but this is fun because we're all comic geeks here. But when the initial golden age of comics, which was the original superhero wave with Superman, Batman, all those classic DC characters, those were mostly during the war era. And when the war era ended, and there wasn't all of a sudden Captain America doesn't have Nazis to fight anymore, they still needed to find ways to engage people. More importantly, as the 50s and 60s hit, television became a more prominent form of entertainment where kids could watch cartoons, because comics obviously originally were marketed towards adolescents. So they really went heavy with the horror camp kind of angle. because it was sort of like they were trying to sell magazines essentially, and that's when they actually created the comic code, because they felt like this is also the McCarthy era, right? So this is when they like are cracking down on everything. They're like, hey, we need a commissioner for baseball. Hey, we need a commissioner for boxing. Hey, we need a comic code to regulate comic books. And as a result of that, they really cracked down on the horror genre of comics, because that became the mainline stuff to sell the kids. And parents were like, there's really weird videos out there. You could probably find them on YouTube about, like, I don't remember the guy's name, but he was like, you know, it's so like politically incorrect now, like the things that they would be saying. Like, this guy's like, if you let your kids read comic books, they're gonna become addicted to masturbation and they're gonna be homosexuals.
There was gonna be a masturbation link. There's always a masturbation link.
Yeah. So, and they're gonna smoke marijuana. It was like, this is like the campaigns that, like, the reefer madness.
It was like the pre-satanic panic of the 80s.
Basically, yeah, exactly. So they put this comic code on there, and that's actually why there's a whole history to that, which I won't get into. But the comic code is pretty interesting. But there were still a few comics and a few people out there that were still writing these sort of horror comics, although they were very heavily edited. But Tomb of Dracula was one of them, and it ran for a very, very long time. But to get back to my point, so the origin story of Blade, so that you guys know, in the original comics, not in the films, is that Blade's mother was a prostitute, and she worked in a I don't know what you call it, a whorehouse, I guess.
Brothel.
A brothel, thank you, the more appropriate term. And she was pregnant with him when she got turned to a vampire. She got turned by the character Deacon Frost, who I believe is the character in
the first one.
Yes.
He's the bad guy in the first one.
Right. And there are that's part of the backstory in the earlier
the original
movies.
film, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's the same. And basically, because of the fact that he was, like, you know, in her body when she became a vampire, that's what gave him his immunity to vampire blood. And that's what makes him a great vampire hunter, because he can get bit by Dracula and still survive. So that's the origin story of that. Now here's another classic comic right here, another important one. This is issue 19. This is when he actually finds out he's immune to vampires. He gets bit by Dracula, and he doesn't turn. And that's when he finds out that he has a superpower and therefore qualifies as a superhero, because he is a true I don't know what you call him, vampire hunter who can't be turned to a vampire.
Now, is Dominic Purcell in that issue? Because he's Dracula, as far as I know.
No, I want to come back to that, actually, though. I'm glad you bring that up.
And he also might be a rapper, because they call him Drake. So
that's true. That's true.
Yes.
Good point.
Another issue here. This is the last one I'm going to show. This is the first appearance in origin story of Hannibal King. And I want to show this because the character Hannibal King, who's played by Ryan Reynolds in the Blade Trinity movie, is an actual character from the comic books.
I did not know that either.
He, in some ways, is very much like the character in that he is a person who was a vampire who was turned by, in the comics, he's turned by Deacon Frost. In the film, he's turned by Parker Posey, I believe, if I remember correctly. But he's a detective kind of. Basically, he's Angel. If you've ever seen the series Angel, the Buffy the Vampire Slayer spinoff, that's basically Hannibal King in the original comics. He's a vampire that's good, who sort of got turned, but he's kind of found his ways out of being. I think he like feeds off of other things other than humans, and he does these cases of like the weird and bizarre.
Okay.
So he's the original Angel.
Oh,
he's
Joss Whedon, you ripped off of this comic book, because not only is it that fact, he also had a whistler in Angel as well. Angel was trained by a whistler guy.
That's true. That's
yeah.
so true.
So this is Hannibal King here. I don't know if you can see him. There might be a glare on there, but he's kind of an older British man. He doesn't have the abs like Ryan Reynolds, or the multi-million-dollar gin company.
Right.
But there's some comic history for the comic geeks out there. But I want to get into the movie itself, and I'm glad you mentioned Drake. Because the one thing that I actually liked about this movie, and I liked a lot, I'm going to talk about more of that, but is that they actually brought in Dracula. because the original comic book series was really a Dracula comic, not a Blade comic. And this is the first Blade movie where you actually have Dracula. So that's one of the things I love about it. But let's let Curtis talk for a minute while I make him another drink. And just I want you to tell us what you love and hate about this film while I make you a drink.
Okay, what do I love about this movie? I like that there's a vampire Pomeranian. First and foremost, that's the best thing. Triple H's gigantimous head.
I mean, the whole cast is looking at this movie for people who haven't seen it or maybe have forgotten. And forgive me for interrupting you, but
No,
I think we should talk about just the cast in general, because there's a crazy cast in this movie, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of people. You're like, hold up, you were here?
Yeah, right? Or people like, I was like, well, I didn't know who that was at the time I saw the movie.
And now they're huge.
Yeah, now I've seen them on other things.
Like Patton Oswalt, he's in there.
Patton Oswalt, and of course I mentioned Jessica Biel. She was kind of popular at the time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I feel like, and you tell me, I feel like this was the first movie I remember seeing Ryan Reynolds as sort of like an action hero in.
Yep. This is like he was making that turn from like, all the Van Wilder type of stuff and then being like, okay, I can do comedy and action.
Right.
It's kind of been his niche now.
Right. Sort of like, okay, I'm going to like get really ripped and like, action, you take off my shirt kind of guy.
I mean, this character is basically Deadpool in everything but name and powers, I guess. I mean, it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, he plays a lot like a lot of Ryan. I mean, if you like Ryan Reynolds, I mean, he plays himself in all the movies. But, and I don't mean that as a criticism, but I mean, you've also got Dominic Purcell, who people would know from Prison Break, or if you watch
or
The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow. He plays Heatwave or Mick Rory. And it was weird for me going back to see this movie, and I had totally I don't think I knew who he was the first time I saw this movie. So seeing him, like, he plays Dracula in this movie, aka Drake, and he's like very pretty and very serious, right? Versus like on Legends, where he's just like kind of a big ham. I don't know if
very gruff.
Yeah, and you've got him. You've got, of course, Wesley Snipes is still in it. And then, it just all these different characters. I was just surprised to see them.
Like Natasha Lyonne is in this.
Yes,
I didn't remember her. And who else? James Remar. He's on Black Lightning, and he also played like
yes. He's like the assistant to every black superhero.
That's his thing, right?
But he plays Gamby on Black Lightning, so
also Dexter's dad.
Which I do enjoy the Black Lightning series, so that's pretty cool. They filmed that in Atlanta, which is near where I live. So
dope.
Yeah. So Brad, have you watched the Black Lightning series?
I love Black Lightning, and I don't want to get on a racist tangent, but but one of my problems with DC Comics is the fact that they did not have a black superhero till like the late 70s. It's like 1978, 79 before they even introduced an African American. I mean, they had pink people. They had
Batmite. Let's not forget.
They had aliens of every color. They didn't have a damn black person. And in the same year, you get Jon Stewart suddenly, thank God, Neil Adams, and then you get Black Lightning and of course Jon Stewart originally as Green Lantern. Jon Stewart was a complete throwaway character. They didn't utilize him at all until what's
Justice League cartoon, I think, is where most people knew Jon Stewart from.
Yeah, well, it was I'm drawing a blank here. Oh no, I'm sorry, it's coming. Steve Englehart, one of my favorite comic book writers, who writes a great Captain America series from the 70s. He took over the Green Lantern run in the like early 80s, and he's like, all right, we're sending Hal Jordan to space because why the fuck is Hal Jordan always on Earth when he's a space cop, which was smart. And they're like, look, we've got this guy John Stewart who no one's using. And he put John Stewart in the Justice League, and like he's going to be the Earth Green Lantern for Justice League. Hal Jordan's going to be the space cop.
Now,
and I love that.
I do too. I have a question though.
Yeah.
And I want to get back to Curtis's take on the movie because we keep interrupting him, and he's our guest. But
interrupting the black guy, huh?
So, well, I interrupt Brad too. So it's just how it goes. So, Tony Isabella created Black Lightning.
Correct.
Who's clearly an Italian man, I would assume.
Yes, he is.
You mentioned Steve Englehart, Neil Adams. Who was the first black writer that maybe wrote some popular stories?
You know
what?
That's a great question. One of the people I know that would be on the top of that list would be Mark Bernardin. If you're a Kevin Smith fan and you listen to his podcast, which used to be Fat Man on Batman, but now it's called Fat Man Beyond, Mark Bernardin's his co-host. And while Mark Bernardin used to work for Entertainment Weekly, and now he's written some great television shows, he actually wrote a lot of comic book series.
Okay.
Some really good ones. And he would be one of the first African American comic book writers that I can think of. But that's a great question.
I really don't have an answer.
Yeah,
I know black people who take over characters after the fact, after they've been it's like a Christopher Priest, but just straight up creating them, I don't know, and that's probably sad.
No, I mean I wish I knew. I would like to know, so I'll have to research that. Maybe people can comment to us if they know.
Yeah, so Black Lightning was the first DC character to have his own comic book character.
Yeah.
His own comic book, I'm sorry. His own storyline. That was his own solo comic. Just as a little history.
Dwayne McDuffie, I just forgot about him.
Dwayne
they launched that
McDuffie's
whole
awesome.
Icon line. They had Icon, that line of it was all black superheroes. I remember that. That was the 90s, with Static and all them.
Yep.
That was a whole thing. But that's
Dwayne McDuffie's a great writer too, for sure. For sure.
And of course, Todd McFarlane creates Spawn, and although Spawn is a burned sort of demon character, he was African American soldier.
That's still a white guy.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying that's another white guy who created a black character.
Yeah.
But so that's just some more comic history. But I'm glad that you're bringing up writers of comics because you guys, who wrote and directed this, right, Brian? Do you know who?
Well, David Goyer.
Yes. Yeah. Which was interesting because this comes into some of the points of this film that I want to talk about, because apparently Wesley Snipes, I don't know where I was going with Steven. Wesley Snipes and Chris Christopherson, who are the main two characters from the Blade, kind of franchise in the first two films, did not like this script and did not like the direction that Goyer took. Have you guys heard about this?
I have not, but I can totally see it in Chris Christopherson's performance. One of my notes on this movie is Chris Christopherson does not want to be here. Everything about his performance, it's just okay, give me the paycheck and let me get the hell out of here. It just reads on screen.
How soon can you kill me?
Well, the same is true of Wesley Snipes, because if you actually watch him in this, he has very few actual even lines. Yeah, and he's just pissed off the whole time, which actually, from what I read, was his basically mood for the entire filming of this film. Now, do you know the reasons why and the story behind this?
No, go ahead and tell us. Unless Curtis knows. I don't know.
Oh, I didn't know.
So, both Wesley Snipes and Chris Christopherson, who plays Whistler, were very upset that they brought in all these new characters. Wesley Snipes felt like they were kind of taking away his sort of screen time, spotlight, and so did. And Whistler's like, I'm the second. Why do we need Hannibal King? Why do we need Whistler's daughter? Why do we need these other characters? And they were really pissed off that David Goyer took this direction. So much so that Wesley Snipes basically kind of secluded himself in his trailer and would only come out just for filming, and basically wouldn't even interact with the other actors on set. And a lot of Ryan Reynolds like kind of snide sort of I don't know what you want to call it, like humor. A lot of that was it seems like a result of the fact that like literally like Wesley Snipes was just being an asshole. So you can kind of see how like Wesley Snipes is like kind of like treats him as an asshole in the film. That's like kind of like real life. Ryan Reynolds actually went on record. They asked him. So he was in an interview. This is early in his career, right? You know, I mean,
Sure.
he wasn't as big as he is now. And they asked him what it was like working with Wesley Snipes, and he says, "I don't know. I didn't meet Wesley Snipes. I only met Blade." Because I guess, when Wesley Snipes was on set, he was only in character, and he didn't socialize or interact with the rest of the cast at all.
Wow.
And so it was exactly what you said, Curtis. It was a paycheck. They just, they felt like they had to do it, and they did it, and they were not happy with it.
Fast forward to today, where Wesley Snipes would probably be thrilled to get a job with Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, please put me in that movie.
Right. Please, let's bring back Blade in the Marvel MCU.
Well, they're talking about doing that. And he's actually, they've been in dialogue with Wesley Snipes. But I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, didn't he do some jail time for tax evasion?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he disappeared for a while. I don't really think he's probably made some movies since he's been out, but I think that sort of tanked his career to some extent, which, is unfortunate because, I enjoy Wesley Snipes.
Yeah, he's great.
But I don't know, I'd like to see him make a comeback. I definitely would.
Do you want him to be Blade again, or do you think he's like too old for that?
Okay, that's a great question. Here, I have to think about that, but off the top of my head, I would say I would love a new Blade movie. I would love to see him in the new Blade movie, but maybe not as Blade.
Yeah,
or maybe as some sort of passing of the torch or something like that.
Yeah.
Can we get a British Blade? Can we get like an Idris Elba Blade?
Oh wow.
Idris Elba can't have all the parts, sir.
No, he can't.
He's British, and he's a handsome man. So
he is. But I mean, I agree with Curtis. We need to find another British.
What's
black
the kid
actor.
from Star Wars?
John Boyega. Yeah, we can give it to John Boyega.
Now that's a fantastic idea, actually.
Yeah,
I love that idea. That's amazing. That's like perfect casting. Or I don't know the guy who plays. I'm blanking on the name on Supergirl this past season.
You mean Jimmy or James? Or
no, not James, but he's playing sort of the anti-hero. He's British.
The Manchester Black guy.
Manchester
I don't know the actor.
Black. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know him, but. Somebody he's been pretty good on there. And Manchester Black's been an interesting African American addition.
British, so he's not African American.
Okay, forgive me.
So you can just say black. It's fine.
Yeah.
British,
it's the
British
old granddad talking. I don't know. I'm just turning into an old white guy. I don't know what the word.
Yeah, I think they should reprise Blade, and I think he's an important character. And actually, from the comics, the more recent comics, he crosses over a lot with Doctor Strange.
He's actually in the Avengers right now, like in the current run. He is. Which is a lot.
Oh, okay.
So I could see a really cool, because I mean Benedict Cumberbatch, however you say his name, he's British anyways, even though he's playing American. But I could see a really cool crossover between a British Blade and a Benedict Cumberbatch.
Here's what I want. Can I? Eventually I would like to talk about this movie, but I'm still enjoying this conversation regardless. I would like to see now. Do you recall there was a Blade television series?
Yes.
Okay. And did you know that Jeff Johns was involved in it?
I did not know that.
Okay. No. And did you know that they briefly, honestly, I haven't watched the
involved?
Series.
Was Greg Berlanti involved?
I don't know. I'd have to look back, but the plan was to spin off the series into one of my favorite Marvel characters, Moon Knight series.
Oh wow, yeah.
Now anybody can make fun of me as much as they want for loving Moon Knight, but I love Moon Knight, and okay, he's more popular now than he used to be. I read the original run, but they were gonna do a Blade kind of Moon Knight sort of universe on the TV show, and I would love to see that in the Marvel MCU or on the Disney streaming network. Something. Bring in Moon Knight, bring in Blade. They're both sort of dark characters. If
you're gonna bring in Moon Knight, you got to do Werewolf by Night.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Which is great as well, and that's great, getting right in my wheelhouse because I love those old horror comics.
Me too.
But let me tell you why I love this movie, because I haven't had a chance to tell you why I love this movie. It's my favorite. Well, because we create this podcast, I think it's clear to hopefully every listener that I do love a good bit of camp. I do love a good bit of humor and fun. The first two Blade movies, I will admit, were probably better movies. But they were because of the time frame that they came out, and because of the angle that they were working, which was not the comic book genre angle. It was a vampire angle. It was building on the vampire popularity. They were very overly violent. There's a lot of blood, a lot of gore. It was grotesque to the point of being, intentionally so. And they did a good job of it. I'm not knocking those films, but I feel like by bringing in Jessica Biel, by bringing in Ryan Reynolds, and some of these, and Patton Oswalt and some of these side characters, even though Wesley Snipes hated it, even though Chris Christopherson hated it, I felt like it brought levity. I felt like it brought a little bit more of the camp feel to it. I actually really loved Ryan Reynolds in this film, and I was not a big Ryan Reynolds fan. The character is very different from the comic book character, but again, I was not familiar with the comic book character at the time. So when I saw this, I was like, wow, this Hannibal King character is cool. Like, I want to know more about this character. Now, Whistler's daughter, I don't know if you know this, she was created by David Goyer specifically for the film. Did you guys know that?
No, but I had a feeling.
I did not know that, but I do know, as far as I recall, this was David Goyer's directorial debut. Yeah. Now, he's written a lot of comics. He has written a lot of decent movies, and he's written some comics that I like. He and James Robinson wrote the JSA, which was an amazing run. This was pre-Jeff Johns run. And he was involved in, for people who don't know, the Dark Knight trilogy, the Christopher Nolan trilogy. I think he was sort of the comic book guy that was involved in it. I don't know how much he was actually involved, maybe heavily, I don't know. So I've always had sort of mixed feelings on David Goyer, because I just don't know how much of it is him versus how much of it is other people that he's worked with on some of these things. It may be mostly him, it may be all him, I don't know. But this was the movie he directed, and I just remember watching this originally thinking, while I enjoy it, I mean, it's still a bad movie. And I want to hear Curtis's take on this, because it sounds like he's got some notes.
Yeah.
So I want to.
My notes are very scattered. They're all like stream of consciousness, like
that's all right.
In the order of things. Like, let's see. Oh no, they made Blade murder a person. That was like a person is what I said. Like at the very beginning, he was like, "Oh, I'm a familiar," and then they murdered him, and all the cops were around him, and I was like, "Oh no!" and one of my notes is, "Why is Triple H's head so damn big?" You know, this is the things I was thinking about.
Yeah.
But this is I feel like this is like the Blade movie that was supposed to be like straight to DVD, and no one told them that they should have just did it that way, and they released it in theaters instead.
I agree with everything you have to say, and that's why I love it. I want to say a couple things.
I loved Blade. I loved the first one just because I hadn't seen something like that. Blade 2 was Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah, which I
think is important to remember. I think that was the first time I saw a movie, and and maybe heard of him. I don't know if I had seen any of his films before, probably not, but thought like, okay, I'm going to pay attention to this guy.
Yeah.
And of course, he did the Hellboy movies, which I loved. And I've pretty much loved most of the things he's done, even though some of his newer stuff hasn't been as popular.
He won an Oscar, didn't he?
Oscar, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, he did like more recently, you know, Pacific Rim and Crimson Peak. They weren't quite as like well regarded, but I still appreciated and enjoy them. He produced Pan's Labyrinth.
I love that film. Yeah.
Fantastic. Phenomenal. The Orphanage, which I think is one of the most sort of creepy, slow burn horror movies. If you've never seen The Orphanage, you should watch that. But anyways.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I said, I still love this movie. I like the side characters. So the character Whistler's daughter, to get back to that point, David Goyer created her for this film, but only because the character that he wanted to utilize was a character in the comic books, and that was the daughter of Van Helsing. And if you know your Dracula lore, you know Van Helsing is the kind of the original vampire hunter, right? Who goes and catches Dracula.
Hugh Jackman.
And he or Anthony Hopkins, if you watch the classic Bram Stokers with Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder. But what happened was the movie Van Helsing was being released at the same time this movie was, and he didn't want to have a Van Helsing character. So the daughter of Van Helsing is in the comics, and she's a comic book character. So instead of that, he's like, well, we can't do Van Helsing's daughter, so let's do Whistler's daughter. And he created Jessica Biel's character. I actually I was not a Jessica Biel's fan. I don't know that I'm a Jessica Biel's fan now. All I know about her is that she was in that weird show Seventh Heaven, and that she's married to Justin Timberlake.
That's all you need to know.
That's
really all you need to know.
That's all there is. I want to say she was in, you know, around this time this movie came out. It was pretty much like the time when she had sort of a movie career.
Well, she was in The Illusionist with Ed Norton.
That's
right. I liked that movie.
That was a decent
She was
movie.
Okay in it. She
was in the A-Team, I want to say, the A-Team movie.
I don't remember that.
I mean, she's fine. She had some cool kind of scenes in this movie where they played a lot of like electro pop music, and she killed vampires.
Playlists are badass. Just remember that.
Yeah, I sort of felt like she was sort of like the Kate Beckinsale, underworld character of this movie. Yeah. Which I love Underworld, and who doesn't love Kate Beckinsale?
I fall asleep every time I try to watch one of those movies.
Maybe that should be the next one. We should try to stay awake for one.
I like every time I'm like, I'm gonna get through this movie. Like 36 minutes in. I don't know what it is. They just put me to sleep. But I want to say this about Jessica Biel. I thought she was great in this. I thought she was a badass. I thought she was cool. Fun fact about this, and if you read IMDb trivia, so she broke a $3,000 camera in the filming of this. So apparently this is what happened. They had the camera set up, and they wanted her to shoot an arrow directly at the camera, and they had put plexiglass in front of the camera with a very, very, very small hole to where the actual lens would shoot to get clarity, so that the plexiglass wouldn't disrupt the clarity of the lens. And they said, no, just shoot directly at the camera because it'll hit the plexiglass and we'll get the shot. She had worked on her archery skills in preparation for this film. She got so good that she actually shot the arrow through the tiny hole, and it went into the camera and destroyed the camera.
That's a cool story. That's actually a cool story.
Pretty badass, and I have to imagine that Justin Timberlake heard that story and was like, okay, we should go out.
Is that what you want? That's what you like?
I don't know. But I mean, she can shoot arrows around corners.
I want a girl that can kill me in my sleep. That's what I want with a bow and arrow.
I think he was thinking like, I need a girl who can, hit like this big of a spot.
It was like he heard that, he was like sploosh.
But no, she's pretty badass, and she shoots arrows around a corner. That's all I remember about her character in this movie, even though I just watched it. And she's like, I can shoot an arrow around the corner, and she shoots it and bounces off, and then it explodes. And I'm thinking, like, that's a whole season of Arrow right there. Just like make a whole season out of that.
Except like every character would have to die and come back to life.
I mean, but hey, I love Arrow for what it is.
Another fun fact: Ryan Reynolds put on 20 pounds of muscle for this role. This was when he became a sex symbol after this film. I feel like, because he was kind of like the comedy goofy kid, and then all of a sudden I was like, wait, where did those abs come from? He's been doing something.
Curtis and I were sort of talking about that this was the first time we remembered seeing him in sort of as an action movie star.
Yeah.
So maybe Curtis can comment a little more on that, or maybe some other.
How hot Ryan Reynolds is? Is that what you want me to comment?
Well, no. I just mean some other reasons why you love or hate this movie, or we got to talk about some of the cheesy lines in this movie.
Yeah. What is it? I remember Blade catching a baby and going coochie coo. That's dope. You know what I mean? Let's see. There was Ryan Reynolds makes a crack at Triple H at one point, and something about his dick being small or something the dog has a bigger dick than you or something, and he's like, "When the fuck did you see my dick, fuckface?" Like this movie is full of great lines.
Yeah,
but it's so goofy. Like they're all stiltedly delivered. I don't know. I'm like, are you trying to be funny here? Like the only one I know is actually trying to be funny is Ryan Reynolds, but everybody else, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either, but Brad, your insight onto Wesley Snipes and his attitude about this movie makes a lot more sense, because every line in this movie that he delivers is phoned in completely.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, Ryan Reynolds seems like he's trying to have fun during this movie.
Yeah.
The fact that he put on all that muscle that you mentioned, and that he's sort of being an action sex symbol in this movie. I think he was at least making an effort.
Yes.
And Jessica Biel was making an effort. Let's talk about Parker Posey.
Thank you. I was going to bring that up.
Let's talk about the fact that there's 2 actors from A Mighty Wind in this movie.
I love Parker Posey.
Yes, I do too. Curtis, have you seen A Mighty Wind?
I am unfamiliar. I don't even know what that is.
Have you ever seen any what's the guy's name, Brad? You're gonna have to help me, because this 114, I finished it all.
Christopher Guest.
Thank you, Christopher Guest. He does all these improv movies,
mockumentaries.
The
guy that does Best in Show.
Yes. So Parker Posey.
Spinal Tap.
Yeah, Parker Posey's been in a lot of his movies, and the other guy who plays sort of a vampire in this movie, and his voice changes, and he's sort of creepy in the police station. The actor's name is not coming to me right now, so you'll have to forgive me.
You're talking about the one that Drake turns into, and they're like, "Oh, you're not the person." He's like, "No, I'm not. I'm shape-shifting." Blue. That guy. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, he's in all the Christopher Guest films as well. Yeah, I can't remember the actor's name either, but you're right. He's in the Christopher Guest films as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, Christopher Guest movies are great. You know what? So there's a few things that have really confused me about this movie, and I maybe Curtis, you or Brian, you can help me with this. In terms of, and I rewatched it recently in preparation for this. There is a whole thing going on, Matrix style, of harnessing humans, right? That's a side story.
They're in Saran Wrap. Right, and I want to say while I'm thinking of it, the actor's name, I looked it up here, is John Michael Higgins.
Thank you. Yes,
and he's been in a lot. He was in A Mighty Wind. He's in Pitch Perfect.
Yeah,
he plays the other commentator with what's her name?
Elizabeth Banks.
Thank you, Elizabeth Banks.
Got you.
So he's in all the Christopher Guest movies with Parker Posey.
So yeah, there's a weird harvesting of humans, Matrix maneuver, and then there's like, so the end of this movie, how they get rid of Dracula, because they haven't really talked about Dracula much. And which is the whole. There's like the whole weird thing where he goes like the vampire store, like store, and he's like they have like Count Chocula cereal. And
even though I've mentioned it, I just want to talk about like how pretty Dominic Purcell looks in this movie.
Yeah, he's very polished.
I'm just not used to seeing him that way or presented in that way.
No, yeah, and I didn't even going back and watching. I'm like, oh wow, that's a guy from whatever, the Prison Break and the Legends. But anyways, at the end, the way that they kill off these vampires and their vampire animals, because like you said, they have like a Pomeranian, they have some like Rottweilers that are like vampire Rottweilers. They release like some kind of like, what is it, like an airborne toxin?
Yeah, they called it what, Dark Star or something like that. Wasn't that what it was called? Something weird like that.
That one, upon rewatching it, the details sort of slipped by me.
Some kind of thing. The blind girl was some kind of scientist apparently. I don't know how she was seeing all these molecules, but she was working with science molecule things. Not that I'm saying that blind people can't do that. I just don't know how it works. Like,
no, it's some sort of.
I don't want to be ableist, but like, come on, let me know.
Special blind science.
Yeah. Let me know. And so she developed a whole thing, and she was like, "Yeah, this has to touch Dracula's blood, and then I guess it goes airborne because he farts it out or something, and then everybody else will die." I guess that was the thing.
Yeah, that kind of I got kind of lost there for a little bit, and I was like, okay. I didn't really know what's happening. I just do
matter by then.
I just do Ryan Reynolds was fighting a Pomeranian, and like Parker Posey was there, and Blade was, I don't know what he was doing.
He's in the title. I don't know.
But I still love this movie. It is still my favorite Blade movie, and I'm not afraid to admit it. And I'm actually really glad Curtis picked it because
for sure.
I loved it. And like I said, for a lot of reasons, this movie was way ahead of its time. It was.
I'd like to hear
comic film.
How so? Tell me how.
Well, okay. One, it's an early comic book film that has a high budget and grossed a pretty big revenue in terms of.
I don't know if it did that.
The early films did.
Okay, yeah.
This is the third one. It's a, you know, like most of the comic book films now that we get, it was a series. So that this is it was an early series. Like you said, it precedes even X-Men from a Marvel standpoint.
Pretty much ended the series. Let's not forget either.
Yeah, but it's a trilogy. That's normal. That's a trilogy. And Wesley Snipes was in jail.
So I would like to know the breakdown of the Trinity in this. Who is the Son and who is the Holy Spirit?
I'll tell you. Hannibal King is the Son, and Whistler's daughter is the Holy Spirit. There you go. Now you have your religious, whatever. But here's the thing. Okay, early comic book film. An African American. He's African American in this film, not African British. Lead. We didn't have a lot of films like that. It's a vampire film, which obviously was true to the era.
You're saying all the things that are true about the first one. Like, what makes this one like different?
Well, I'm just saying that this is in that series, but I do think that Ryan Reynolds made a presence on screen for what I think of as the first time in what becomes a very common role for him.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point.
I feel like it brought in someone like David Goyer, who was a person who traditionally was a comic book writer, and they actually gave him a platform to actually be involved in filmmaking.
Should they have?
That's where I'm at with that. I'm not the biggest Goyer fan.
Yeah, I'm with you, Curtis, on that.
I have a question, and you'll know this, Brian, and I can't remember because I drank way too many Hannibal King cocktails here. Was David Goyer in the discussion for the Green Lantern film?
Did you and I discuss him?
You mentioned a bunch of people that they were looking to have do the Green Lantern film, and they end up settling on the guy who did the James Bond movies. But I wondered if Dave Goyer was one of the people, because that makes sense that he would bring in Ryan Reynolds.
I don't recall. I do know that Greg Berlanti was originally involved in the Green Lantern film.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned his name.
And I that's honestly, I don't recall. I think Goyer may have been involved. I think that the studio was more pushing the Ryan Reynolds angle, which would make sense into why, they maybe could have been the same situation here.
Yeah, because I feel like, based on what I read from the experience that Ryan Reynolds had on set, was that really everyone, but him included, kind of got the shit into the stick, because Wesley Snipes was just not even willing to meet people where they were. So the reason I'm asking that question is that makes sense of why, even though this is a Marvel franchise and of course Green Lantern's a DC franchise, that why they would be like, hey, let's give this guy a platform, because he did a great job as Hannibal King. I thought he was phenomenal as Hannibal King. I feel like that was a role, or I should say, the way that they wrote Hannibal King in this film was a perfect vehicle for Ryan Reynolds. Very vastly different from the comic book, but I still thought it was a fun character. What do you think? Do you have anything to say, Curtis? I'm sorry.
No, I was just doing research on the whole Goyer thing. I don't see any connections between him and Green Lantern. Okay. But he did do like Man of Steel, and the most interesting thing I found going through his IMDb resume here is that he wrote all 3 Blades, which I don't think I was cognizant of. So this is the first one that he wrote and direct, and he also did the Nick Fury movie. He wrote the Nick Fury movie with David
Hasselhoff one.
So now I really need to watch that.
And Dark City, which I love.
Right,
so.
He did do Dark City. And like I said, he did write the he was involved in the JSA comic, which I loved. So he's definitely been involved in stuff that I've liked. I just don't know like how much of it has been him or how much of it has been other people that he's also been involved with. Because I'm with Curtis on this. I don't know how I feel about David Goyer in general.
Well, Wesley Snipes and Chris Christopherson did not like him.
We know that for certain.
This we know. And they were not happy with this film, and they basically just grinded it out. And knowing that when you watch the film, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. Because, like, Wesley Snipes, like, I'm either like, he's just a really good actor in his annoyance of Ryan Reynolds, or he's just really annoyed by, like, Ryan Reynolds. Yeah, and it was...
Yeah. So let's get back. I want to at least briefly touch upon Parker Posey. We've mentioned
I love Parker Posey.
So I think Parker Posey's hilarious, and in this movie, she's got like this resting bitch face vampire thing going on. But I mean, she's great, and she pretty much hams it up, which I think you'd expect. I did enjoy her performance in this, even though it does kind of verge on cheesy. But, really a lot of the actors in this movie are comedic actors. And then they make this, like, trying to make this movie, which I feel like they were trying to push it extra dark. I mean, they have the comedy with Ryan Reynolds, and they did kind of play on
Oswald as well. They had Pat Oswald in there.
But they had all these comedic actors in this movie. Yet I feel like they were trying to push it sort of in the grittier, darker, let's push it even darker.
All the Blade movies were pretty gritty.
Yeah, but I feel like they were really trying to push this one even further. Maybe that's just my take on it. I don't know. But.
I think if you go back and watch the first and second movie, I feel like this one is the least gritty of them.
Well, okay, but like, I kind of see what he's saying. Maybe they were trying and they just didn't succeed. I think maybe that's the thing. Yeah. I think they were trying. They're like, okay, we're going to make it so dark, so violent and all this stuff. And then all the stuff didn't come together the way they wanted it to.
You guys are on the same page. I'm on a different page.
Yeah, somewhere in space somewhere else.
I don't know where you are.
I'm on the this is a great movie and I love it page.
Go back Go back to your comic books.
They clearly made this movie for me.
This was the original Hannibal King. I like Ryan Reynolds as Hannibal King. But like I said, I admitted at the beginning, when I see a movie first and then read the comics later, I'm more accepting of the movie. If I had read the comics originally and then went to the movie, I would have been like, what in the hell are they doing to my characters? So, but I still liked it. I don't know. I think it's a fun movie. I think, like I said, I thought Jessica Biel's was great. I thought Patton Oswalt was funny.
You keep adding an S to her name. Is it there? I think it's just Jessica Biel. I think it
could be.
I think you're right.
Adding an S to her name, and it's fantastic. But I have to correct you.
Is it Beals or Beal?
I think there's Jennifer Beals.
That's probably who I'm thinking of. Flashdance.
And then there's Jessica Biel.
It's Jessica Biel. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I learned something new. I was mixing her with Flashdance because I love Flashdance as well. I love Flashdance. I love Blade Trinity. I'm a maniac on the
what
floor.
else do you need to know?
I'm a maniac on the floor.
Is there any action in Flashdance? Let's do that one.
I love Flashdance. I love all 80s dance movies. Whether it be Footloose or Dirty Dancing,
I know this to be true.
Or Breakin' to Electric Boogaloo. But yeah, I still like this movie, and it is so my wife and I usually when October hits, we kind of do our Halloween kind of playlist of films. This one comes up for me. I always put this one on. I love it.
No.
It's my Dracula movie.
Wow. If I was gonna choose a bad like 90s Dracula movie, because there was a lot of like vampire things.
True, very true.
I would probably go Dracula 2000. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean that's John Carpenter.
Johnny Lee Miller, John Carpenter. I don't know.
Yeah, that one's classic, but I like this one too. Should I tell you what we're gonna watch for our next movie? Because you don't know.
You can tell me because I don't know.
This one's gonna blow your mind. I saved this one.
Okay.
This is a surprise.
Uh-oh. And
you're gonna be like, wait, what? But you're gonna watch it and you're gonna be like, this was great. Because I pulled out the Never Too Young to Die, and that one.
You did. You discovered that one. I gotta give you credit for that one.
I got another one for you.
Okay. Does it have John Stamos?
I wish. Any John Stamos movie would be great. No. This is a movie also currently playing on Tubi. So if you have the Tubi app, you can watch this for free with a little bit of commercials. Okay, I'm just going to say a few things about this movie, but I'm going to tell you the title first. The title of this film is Oblivion. No, it's not that Tom Cruise bullshit. This is a 1994 independent released film. Okay. Peter David wrote the script for this.
Mm-hmm. I've met Peter David several times, actually.
Peter David is a huge Star Trek fan, but also a writer of Spider-Man and comics and many other things.
Spider-Man 2099.
Yeah, you got me a signed issue number 1 of that, which maybe I'll show next week when we do this one.
We saw enough of your comics.
No, I'm bringing them back. I don't care. This is a low-budget film, but it's in the vein of the classic sci-fis. It's an alien cowboy western. It's got some great cameos, side characters by people like George Takei and Isaac Hayes. You do know this movie?
I have not seen it, but I am aware of it.
Okay, so there is a sequel to it. I could not find the sequel because I wanted to do 1 and 2. I couldn't find the sequel online. Apparently, it's not available currently for stream. But it's fun. I mean, it's low budget. It's campy as hell. It's cheesy. But I thought it was a really fun movie. And I figured you hadn't seen it before. No. And when I saw that Peter David wrote the script, I was like, we got to do this.
I love Peter David. In fact, the last time I saw Peter David at a convention, he had his daughter with him, like a young teen. I'm guessing she was like maybe 12, 13 years old. And he was, of course, signing, books and stuff like that, comics. And she was just drawing little pictures and signing them and giving them to people. And I thought it was awesome. Amazing.
Yeah.
That she would come with her dad to the convention and hang out like all day. Peter David is a super nice guy. I've met him several times at some conventions. Yeah, and I love Spider-Man 2099. In fact, of all the Spider-Mans, he's my favorite of the Spider-Mans.
Well, I think you'll like this movie. So we're going to do that next time. Let's close it out. I'm going to ask Curtis if he has any final thoughts on Blade Trinity.
Yeah.
Coochie coo. That's all I got to say.
Thank you for selecting this. Thank you for being here, Curtis. It was fun to have you. I don't care what you guys say. I like Blade Trinity.
I like it for what it is. I enjoyed revisiting it. I enjoyed seeing all these people that I had no idea were in Blade Trinity. Seeing them again in these different roles. And it does make it pretty fun. The cast is amazing. I think they're underutilized, but yeah, it's a movie that we watched.
Hey.
I'm gonna just show another comic book shot there of Hannibal King. First appearance.
No more booze for Brad.
All right, Brian, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I think that's about it. We didn't really talk about the movie that much, but
there's not much to talk about, honestly. Yeah. It's just, they fight, there's vampires. Ta-da!
He's a vampire
vampires like explode into burning flames. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I thought we covered all the important things.
Yeah.
I felt good about it.
All right.
All right. Until next time, thank you for listening. Again, thank you, Curtis, for being here. We appreciate having him. We are the Bad Action Movie Brothers. I drank a lot of Negroni upgrades.
I drank a lot of Old Granddad.
Yeah,
man,
I don't know how you're still standing, bro.
I'm feeling good. I could do another one.
No. All right. Well, thank you for listening.
All right.
Until next time. Peace out.
Bye.
Bye.